She said it like she was reading off a grocery list. No hesitation. No flicker of guilt. Just, I'm heading down to the beach house. With Nate. Like Nate was a golden retriever and not the guy I watched her practically undress with her eyes 3 barbecues ago. I set my coffee down without a sound. The spreadsheet on my laptop still glowed. Projected revenue, fixed expenses, Q4 targets. Neat little numbers, perfectly aligned. Unlike my life. If you go to our beach house with him, I said, still staring at the screen, we're done. She scoffed, loud enough to cover the silence that followed. You don't mean that. It's just sun and sand. There it was. The line in the sand, and the first heel grinding it out. She didn't look at me when she walked out. Just grabbed the keys from the bowl like she always did, texting someone, probably Nate, and shut the door like it was any other Saturday. What she didn't know was that I already knew. About Nate. About her little escape plan. About the project she was working on, supposedly with a team from Baltimore, the one she'd talked about exactly 0 times before it required a full weekend trip with a married man. And not just any man. One I'd shaken hands with. Bought ribs for. Watched lose to me at cornhole like it meant something. I didn't yell. Didn't chase. Didn't even blink. But I did close the laptop. And I did open the top drawer of the sideboard, the one she never used. Inside, a flash drive, a manila envelope, and a copy of a very old, very boring-looking deed. The kind of thing most people would ignore. She had. I called nobody. I just opened the calendar app on her iPad, which she didn't bother logging out of. There it was, weekend break, South Shore. The same weekend she'd claimed I should take time to myself, decompress, maybe go see your brother. Instead, I did what any responsible man would do when he sees a tornado warning and hears his wife say, "It's probably just a breeze." I packed a bag. Not much, just enough for 3 days and a perfectly timed nuclear reset. Because if she was going to choose a side, I was going to make sure she knew exactly what side she landed on. You know, over 90% of the folks who hear stories like this never actually subscribe. And hey, if you've gotten this far, well, you're the kind who likes watching slow explosions detonate in daylight. Hit that subscribe button. It motivates our team to keep telling these stories the way they deserve to be told. Anyway, the guest list was already in motion. Invitations? Not quite. But I had a few quiet conversations over the last week. The kind that end with, just show up. Bring the kids. I'll have the grill going. Nate's wife was one of them. His kids? The same ones he used to post about during Family Fridays. Even his in-laws. The ones who bought them their first car and helped them cover daycare for 2 years. Yeah, them too. I knew the ocean wouldn't be the loudest thing that weekend. Not even close. She thought the betrayal was quiet. That it could be hidden behind beach selfies and cryptic captions. But the thing about secrets is, they rot when you put them somewhere warm. Like a sunny porch. Or a beachfront deck. And she walked straight into it. Confident. Smiling. Wearing the sundress I bought her last year with our joint card. She crossed the line. I just made sure there were witnesses. The photo came in at 6:08 p.m. Her toes half buried in the sand. That overpriced Sauvignon Blanc in hand. Stem tilted just enough to show off her manicure. Sunset filtering through the window behind her. And in that reflection, Nate. Shirtless. Grinning. Holding a second glass. She didn't caption it. She didn't have to. The message was clear. I did it. I went. What are you going to do about it? I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because the wine she was smugly sipping? I'd had it delivered. She'd forgotten I managed the liquor vendor's corporate account. Bulk orders for company retreats, client mixers. I added a case of her favorite to our last shipment and tagged it with a surprise beach delivery. Use guest name at gate. She thought she was clever for finding it stocked in the cabinet. Thought fate was smiling on her affair. Thought. What she didn't realize was that her fate had been scheduled 2 days prior. When she left her laptop open while printing retreat documents in the home office, I noticed the calendar pop-up flash for half a second. SS Beach, Friday through Sunday. That was all I needed. I didn't even need her password. She used the same too, our daughter's birth year and the name of her old cat. I guessed right on the first try. There it was, a shared album with Nate, full of ideas for the trip. A playlist. A grocery list. By charcoal, lemons, herb goat cheese, condoms, hidden. Real subtle, Nate. So I added a few names to the mix. Not in the album, of course. In the real world. I made calls. One to Nate's wife, who picked up on the second ring and listened for 7 minutes without a word. Another to his parents. His mother said, well, we always wondered. Then, we'll be there. I also called the property manager. Asked her to make sure everything's stocked for guests, family arriving Friday afternoon. Special dinner planned. She loves me. She's the one who helped us find the place 15 years ago when it was falling apart and smelled like fish guts. She even called me sweetheart when I offered to double her weekend rate. She had the sheets cleaned, the grill scrubbed, and, this part was critical, the guest logbook dusted and left open on the kitchen counter. I also added one more detail, something small. I replaced the framed photo in the hallway, the one of our wedding day, swapped it with a print of our prenups signature page, zoomed in just enough to highlight the section. Infidelity resulting in property reassignment clause, triggered upon guest occupancy breach. She never read the fine print. No one ever does. But she would. Oh, she would. Back at the beach, she probably poured another glass and turned her phone screen down, pleased with herself. Maybe she thought I was spiraling, pacing, wondering what she was doing, waiting to forgive her when she got back Monday. She'd built that version of me in her head, a quiet, predictable man too logical to retaliate. Someone who processes betrayal like a software update. Except logic has its sharp edges. She wasn't alone. She was hosting a reunion she didn't plan. They were already halfway down the coast. Her wine wasn't the only thing arriving that night. She just didn't know it yet. At 6:42 p.m. sharp, right as she was plating up some smug little charcuterie board she'd arranged to look effortless, but posted twice to her story, gravel crunched in the driveway. She assumed it was a delivery. Maybe the fresh towels she requested via the app. Maybe more of that wine she thought had magically appeared. She was already half a bottle in. Nate still out back, shirt unbuttoned like he thought he was auditioning for a resort catalog. But when she opened the door, it wasn't a delivery driver standing there. It was a woman, maybe mid-40s, in a pressed navy blouse and jeans too clean for a road trip. Beside her, two kids, one with a backpack slung low, the other holding a folded towel like he was told to behave or else. Behind them, an older couple stood quietly, hands clasped like they were attending a polite funeral. "Hi," the woman said, voice calm, composed, but a little too rehearsed. "Is this the Winston property?" She blinked. "No. I mean, this is my house." The woman smiled, sadly. "Oh." She glanced at the kids. "Well, not for much longer, I suppose." Before she could fire off whatever half-formed defense she had brewing, Nate strolled in through the sliding doors behind her, wiping his hands with a dish towel, clearly expecting a package or a neighbor. He froze, dead in his tracks. The color drained out of his face so fast it looked like someone unplugged him. He croaked. "That's my wife." The silence that followed could have flattened a wave. The kids didn't move. The older couple didn't even blink. The woman, Nate's wife, just raised her eyebrows. Not high, not theatrical. Just enough to say, "Really?" She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "I assume we'll be staying in the guest cottage?" she asked. She turned her head slightly toward the back patio. "Is the grill on already?" Nate stammered something. Useless. She didn't even look at him. "I wasn't expecting company," she finally managed, eyes darting from face to face like she was searching for someone to lie to. "This isn't really, ready for guests." "Oh, don't worry," Nate's wife said. "We're not picky." The older couple nodded in unison. The woman said nothing, but the man offered a quiet, "We brought linens." Then came the sound. Another car. A low hum down the road. She stepped out onto the porch, heart racing now. A black sedan pulled in behind the SUV. The driver's door opened. It was her husband, wearing a clean polo, calm as sunrise, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He waved at the kids as he passed. She didn't say his name. Couldn't. Her throat locked. He stepped inside and looked around like he was inspecting a rental property. "Evening," he said to the room, then glanced at her. "Didn't realize we had such a big crowd." Nate's wife gave him a small nod. "Thank you again for inviting us." He turned back to her. His own wife. "Hope you don't mind. I figured, since everyone was already heading this way, it'd be rude not to coordinate." She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. The kids sat on the edge of the couch without being told. Nate's parents walked straight to the kitchen like they remembered the layout. Her husband placed his bag neatly in the hallway and returned to the living room. Then the worst part. He sat, right in the chair by the fireplace, the one she always called her reading nook, and just looked at her. Not angry, not smug, just there. And suddenly, it wasn't her house anymore. It was a stage, and every seat had filled before the curtains went up. She yanked Nate by the wrist the second she found a sliver of privacy, dragging him past the wine rack and into the narrow hallway leading to the laundry room. Her voice barely broke above a whisper, but every syllable was acid. "What the hell is happening, Nate? You told me they weren't suspicious." You told me your wife didn't know, didn't even suspect anything. I didn't. Jesus, I didn't know they were coming, he whispered back, eyes darting over her shoulder like a kid who broke a vase and was hoping the sound didn't reach the next room. I swear, I didn't invite them. I haven't spoken to my parents in weeks. That's comforting, she hissed. And what? They just happened to show up. All of them. The same weekend you bring me here. He looked like he might cry. I don't know. Maybe someone said something. Maybe your husband. Before he could finish, a voice drifted in from the patio, low, calm, deliberate. Dinner's at 7. Her husband stood outside the sliding glass doors, holding a tray of uncooked salmon, seasoned and wrapped neatly in foil. He wasn't looking at her. He was adjusting the grill. I figured we'd all eat together, he said, since this is about family. Then he walked back toward the deck like nothing was wrong. Like this was some warm reunion, and not a social autopsy with the corpse still twitching on the table. She stood frozen in the hallway, Nate beside her, visibly wilting. Neither of them said a word. They both knew what came next. Dinner. Not a word either of them had planned. Not an event they intended. Not a moment they were prepared for. But now it was happening. They walked out together, barely. She felt like her legs were moving under someone else's command. Her stomach churned as the smells of grilled fish and toasted bread reached her nostrils. The table had been set. Plates out. Wine glasses filled. Her husband even lit the candles, the ones she saved for special evenings. Nate's wife was already seated. One kid beside her, the other across the table. His parents were mid-conversation with her husband. Something about how lovely the drive was. Everyone smiled, too politely, like they were all at a wake for a relative no one liked. She sat. There was no other option. To leave now would mean one thing: guilt. And not the quiet, deniable kind. The kind that screams. If they bailed on dinner, they'd have to explain why. Why her face had gone pale when the SUV pulled up. Why Nate couldn't look his wife in the eye. Why her husband, her supposedly oblivious husband, looked like the only person not pretending. So she sat, and Nate sat beside her, across from his own wife, across from the kids who didn't say a word but kept staring at the two of them like a slow-burn horror movie. The first course was salad. Arugula, candied pecans, balsamic vinaigrette, her recipe. Her husband served it with surgical precision, like a maitre d' at a five-star place he never wanted to eat at again. No one spoke at first. The clink of forks and knives was deafening. Then Nate's mom broke the silence. So, how long have you two been involved? The fork paused midair. Nate's wife didn't flinch. She just kept chewing. Nate coughed. Excuse me. His dad chuckled. Son, your mother asked you a question. The table fell silent again. Even the kids stopped eating. From the far end, her husband topped off the wine like it was just another evening. She glanced at him. He was smiling faintly. A polite, distant smile. The kind you give strangers who stand too close in elevators. The worst part? Nobody left. Because to leave would be to admit. Admit the texts. The weekends. The excuses. The beach playlist labeled Q3 planning. Instead, they ate. Together. Like one big, broken family. The grilled salmon flaked perfectly, medium rare, skin crisp. The kind of meal people post with hashtags like hashtag coastal living and hashtag blessed. Nate's wife complimented the seasoning. Lemon and dill? She asked casually, wiping the corners of her mouth with the cloth napkin her husband had ironed that morning. Very fresh. She didn't respond. Couldn't. Her throat was too tight. She just nodded, trying to chew without choking. The wine sat heavy in her stomach. Her husband poured another round. Not hurried. Not slow. Mechanical. Then came the question. Spoken so softly, it almost sounded like she was asking about the weather. How long has this been going on? The clink of a fork meeting china. Nate dropped his gaze to his plate, pretending to inspect the parsley garnish. Silence. The kids froze. Across from her, Nate's wife kept her tone level. I'm not angry. Just curious. He finally looked up. It's not what it looks like. The mother-in-law tilted her head. Oh, so it's not an affair. He swallowed. It's complicated. That was the wrong answer. The mother-in-law turned to her. Was this the first time, dear? She nearly dropped her glass. I don't think this is. We're not judging. The older woman said gently. We've all made mistakes. But I'm asking because the first time is often the most honest. Before the cover stories start piling up, the air shifted. From judgment to autopsy. She tried to breathe. The room felt narrower, the lights too warm. Nate tried to deflect. We didn't plan this. Her husband cleared his throat slightly, not to speak, but as if to remind them he was still there. Still listening. Nate's wife leaned back in her chair, swirling her wine. I found a receipt in your wallet from February. 2 rooms. Palm View Inn. You told me that was for a conference. He blinked. It was. I mean, I had to extend. There was bad weather. Her voice didn't rise. You called me from the hallway. I remember. The echo. You never used speakerphone before. That night you did. The kids kept their eyes on their plates. Like this was just grown-up talk. But they weren't too young to understand. Kids always know when the truth has been peeled open. Her own husband hadn't said a word since dinner started. He just ate, occasionally glanced at his watch, and topped off glasses like a perfect host. And every time she looked at him, he was already looking at her. Not with anger, not with sorrow, with stillness. The kind of stillness that makes a person reconsider every decision that led to it. How long? Nate's wife asked again, her eyes not leaving hers. She couldn't answer. Nate tried. It's not like we kept track. So it wasn't the first time, his mother interrupted. He looked at his father for help. The old man just kept chewing. Silent. Disappointed. The mother-in-law picked up her napkin and placed it gently on her lap. I suppose what hurts the most, she said, is the coordination. The effort. To deceive this many people takes work. She looked across the table, directly at her. Did it feel worth it? At any point. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. And across from her, her husband finally set down his fork. Still no words. Just the smallest raise of one eyebrow. The room didn't need shouting. Didn't need threats. Because every single person at that table had become a mirror. And her reflection wasn't human anymore. It was statistics. It was patterns. It was receipts and calendar events and wine labels and hotel echoes. It was an audit. In real time. And she was the discrepancy. The hallway smelled like lemon wood polish and linen spray. The scent she always insisted on for creating a calm environment. She had half a glass of wine left in her hand, and the stem clinked softly as she turned the corner, bare feet brushing the rug she bought on a self-care weekend in Santa Barbara. She reached for the master bedroom door like muscle memory. Like this place was still hers. But the knob didn't turn. She blinked. Tried again. Nothing. Then she saw it. A piece of printer paper taped cleanly to the door. Centered. No handwriting. Just plain, 14-point font. Guests in this room. Please use the guest cottage. At first, she laughed, soft and stunned, like someone misreading a joke. Then she reached up to peel it off, fingers trembling. It didn't budge. Scotch tape on all 4 corners, sealed tight. She knocked. Once. Twice. No answer. Of course not. She wasn't even sure who was behind the door anymore. And she wasn't ready to find out. The hallway behind her creaked. She turned, wine sloshing slightly in the glass. Nate stood there, arms folded, shirtless, barefoot, pathetic. She locked it? He asked quietly, trying to keep his voice down. I didn't even pack a bag. She stared at him. He repeated, gesturing toward the door. Locked it, right? She looked at the glass in her hand. Then back at him. It's not locked for her, she said. It's locked against us. He looked like he might cry. Where should I? The couch. But you're... The couch, Nate. She turned and walked away before he could say anything else. The guest room was smaller than she remembered. Same bed. Same mismatched nightstands she'd always said they'd replace, and never did. The overhead fan wobbled slightly, the light buzzing faintly. The air smelled stale, like she wasn't supposed to be there. There was no toothbrush, no slippers, no robe. She didn't bother changing. Just lay on the bed, stiff in her sundress, eyes open in the dark, ears straining to hear anything through the wall. And eventually, she did. The soft creak of springs. Nate settling onto the couch. Then the whisper. I'm sorry, he murmured through the wall. I didn't know it'd be like this. She didn't respond. Because she did. She always knew this would go somewhere dark. She just thought she'd get there on her own terms. Instead, she was exiled in her own home, sleeping in a room she hadn't set foot in for years. While her husband, her quiet, unassuming, Excel spreadsheet-loving husband, he was calm, hosting, delegating rooms like a concierge at a boutique hotel. And somehow, despite everything, he was the one in the master suite. The door didn't need a deadbolt. The sign had already said everything. Guests in this room. Not cheaters. Not liars. Guests. She blinked at the ceiling, barely breathing. Outside, the ocean pounded the shore. In here, not even Nate's apologies could soften the silence. She finally closed her eyes and felt the house she once owned reject her, one floorboard at a time. The fire cracked steadily, spitting tiny sparks into the humid night air. A lazy breeze came in off the water, carrying salt, smoke, and something sour beneath it. Resentment, maybe. The logs were perfectly arranged. Her husband had done it himself earlier in the evening, like everything else. As if kindling was therapeutic. As if setting a flame under a circle of liars wasn't symbolic enough. Everyone had found a seat without being asked. Nate sat stiffly on a wicker chair he once claimed was too soft. His father leaned against the deck rail, sipping tea. The kids were upstairs, finally asleep, or pretending to be. The rest of them were exactly where her husband wanted them. Positioned, present, uncomfortable. She sat curled in an Adirondack chair wrapped in a blanket she didn't remember packing, legs drawn up, a second glass of wine in hand. She hadn't eaten dinner. No one asked why. It was Nate's wife who broke the silence. She spoke into her glass, not quite facing anyone. Every Sunday at 10:02 p.m. For almost a year. No one moved. He always said it was work. Client in Chicago. Urgent revisions. Something about time zones. She smiled, not kindly, not even bitterly. Just empty. I believed him. I wanted to. He'd be typing, pacing, earbuds in. Real stressed. She looked across the fire at Nate, who stared at the flames like they owed him an explanation. You remember that, Nate? She asked. The calls you took with the balcony door cracked open, pretending the wind was too loud. Nate said nothing. The flames hissed. Her husband, still quiet beside the fire pit, picked up a marshmallow skewer and idly twirled it in the air like he was calculating wind speed. Then, softly, he said, that's when she always showered. Every Sunday. 10:02. Her breath caught in her throat. She didn't know why he chose that moment to speak. Maybe he'd been waiting, measuring, letting the fire burn just hot enough before adding fuel. He didn't look at her when he said it. Didn't say her name. Just stated it like a timestamp. Like data. Nate turned to her. That's a coincidence. Her husband looked up. Is it? She stared back at him. Her husband, the man she once called boring because he never liked surprises. Never forgot a calendar invite. Never missed a utility bill. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even hurt. He was observing. She realized, for the first time, that she hadn't just underestimated him. She had never really known him. Nate's wife leaned forward. I used to wonder why he'd get a little giddy on Sunday nights. Like he was looking forward to something. You remember that little hum you used to do, Nate? Like you were proud of yourself? Nate's father chuckled dryly. That hum. Yeah, he did that before sneaking into the liquor cabinet as a teenager, too. No one laughed. No one yelled. No one needed to. Because no one denied it. Her mouth opened. Closed. Nothing came out. The cold air off the water cut through the blanket. The fire's warmth didn't reach her. Across from her, her husband tossed a dry twig into the flames. It sparked like a match against bone-dry wood. I guess we all have patterns, he said. Some people build them. Some people hide inside them. Another silence. But this one didn't stretch. It settled. And this time, no one asked questions. They already had all the answers. They'd just been comparing notes. Quietly. Carefully. And now, every alibi, every excuse, every, you're just being paranoid, melted away under the weight of two firelit stares. She thought she could navigate lies in the dark. But here, under the fire's glow, there was nowhere left to hide. She woke to the sound of zippers. Not alarms. Not conversation. Just the steady, practiced rustle of packing, polyester against cotton, the soft thump of shoes being wrapped in newspaper. She didn't even need to open the door to know what it was. They were leaving. Nate's parents had the discipline of people who never needed to explain themselves. They moved through the hallway like ghosts, bypassing the kitchen, skipping breakfast, not even bothering with the second pot of coffee. The house felt suddenly smaller, like their departure was sucking the air out of every room. She peeked through the crack in the spare room door. They didn't see her. Or maybe they did, and simply didn't acknowledge it. His father wheeled a modest black suitcase down the hallway. His mother carried a floral tote bag filled with board games and crosswords. She hadn't played any of them. No goodbyes. No speeches. Not even a parting glance at Nate, who stood by the window pretending to check the weather. They didn't say his name. They didn't say hers. The front door closed behind them with a quiet click. And just like that, they were gone. An hour later, she heard the garage door open. Nate's wife moved deliberately, each item packed with care, no chaos, no tears. The kids loaded themselves into the back seat. One carried a stuffed animal under one arm. The other had headphones on and a faraway look that didn't belong on a child that young. She walked them to the car, arms crossed tightly against the morning chill, but didn't dare speak. Nate stood beside her, helpless, trying to force significance into a goodbye that wouldn't come. Natalie, can we? He started, reaching out. She stepped back. Not dramatically, not harshly, just enough. The kind of retreat that says, "We've already tried." She finished securing the second seatbelt, closed the door with care, and circled around to the driver's side. She didn't look at Nate. She looked at her husband. He was out on the front step, holding a mug of black coffee, not waving, not smiling, just present. She met his eyes. "Thank you," she said, "for letting them see." He nodded once, not in approval, in acknowledgement. Then she got into the SUV and drove off. The sound of tires crunching gravel faded into the sea wind. Inside, the silence thickened. Nate hadn't moved. She could see the faint tremble in his jaw, the twitch in his fingers like he wanted to punch a wall, but knew better than to leave a mark on someone else's house. "I didn't think she'd actually," he started. "No one cares what you thought," she said. He looked at her, eyes wide, a flicker of betrayal. But she wasn't playing his game anymore. She wasn't playing anyone's. Because in that moment, it hit her. This wasn't just about Nate, or her husband, or even the affair. It was about witnesses. She hadn't just betrayed a marriage. She had tried to rewrite the story in secret, and someone else had read it out loud. To everyone. And now the characters were walking off stage, one by one. Nate had lost his family. But her loss? It was quieter, slower, more surgical. She watched her husband step back inside, closing the front door behind him like he was sealing a tomb. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. She was still standing there. And she was already gone. She found him on the back deck that evening, just after the last light bled from the horizon. The fire pit was out. The grill scrubbed clean. Chairs tucked in. Her husband sat with a glass of water in hand. No wine, no music, no need for distraction. She'd rehearsed what she wanted to say for hours. Between emptying the dishwasher, folding a stranger's towel she found on the banister, and staring at the guest book still open on the counter with all their names recorded in neat handwriting, she'd tried out a dozen different openings. None of them landed. So when she stepped out and stood in the doorway, she said the only thing left. It wasn't supposed to be real. He didn't look up right away, just nodded once slow. "I thought you'd just," she continued, voice catching, "get upset. Maybe yell. Maybe leave for a few days. And then come home." He turned his head slightly, just enough to meet her eyes. "You were right about one thing," he said. "I used to chase." She felt her legs falter, but didn't sit. She couldn't. That chair across from him wasn't hers anymore. "Not tonight. Can we fix it?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Silence. Then he leaned forward and set his glass down on the deck railing with precision. The sound it made, soft glass on soft wood, was somehow louder than any argument they'd ever had. "You went to the house," he said. "So I left it to you." She blinked. "What?" "The trust transfer's done," he continued. "I filed it the morning you left. The deed's in your name now. The land. The property. Utilities are auto-paid for the next 6 months. You won't notice the shift. It's all clean. All legal." She shook her head, not following. "You're giving it to me?" "I'm returning it," he corrected. "You made your choice. So I made mine." She moved closer. "So you're leaving?" He looked at her then, fully. Calm. Steady. Devastating. "No," he said. "You are." Her mouth opened, closed. "What?" "I'll be staying here," he said simply. "With peace." She laughed, a panicked, brittle sound. "You can't just throw me out. This is my house." He raised an eyebrow. "Is it?" She took a step forward, suddenly desperate to claw back some ground. "You can't be serious. You can't just stay and push me out. You think you'll feel good? Alone in a house full of what? Memories? Burn trust." He smiled. Not cruelly, but like someone watching a predictable movie they've already seen 4 times. "I won't be alone," he said. "Not for long." She felt the bottom drop out from under her. "You're seeing someone?" "No." "Then what?" "I'm seeing," he said. "That's the difference." She stood there, barefoot on the deck, the wind knotting her hair, heart pounding against bone like a warning bell. For 19 years, she'd built a version of him in her mind. Predictable, passive, convenient. A man who would forgive because forgiveness was easier than confrontation. She never imagined he'd walk away while standing still. "You're really going to stay here?" she asked. "After all this?" He looked out at the ocean. The tide had gone out. "This house was supposed to be our sanctuary," he said. "But you turned it into your secret." She didn't respond. "You want it," he added. "Take it. Put your name on the mailbox. Paint the walls. Live here if you can. But don't ask me to carry what you shattered." Her hands trembled. He stood, took the glass, and walked past her, gently. No bump. No dramatic exit. Just a man who had stopped chasing ghosts. She turned to follow, but the screen door clicked shut behind him. He didn't lock it, but he didn't need to. Because in that moment, she knew she was no longer in the house. She was on it, and he'd already moved back in. She saw them from the upstairs window, two figures standing by the shore, one in a navy windbreaker, the other in a tan blazer with a clipboard. The sign was still folded under the realtor's arm, but she knew what it was before he even planted it into the sand. The same sign she'd seen in front of other people's endings. She bolted out the door barefoot, heart in her throat, hair still damp from the shower she'd taken to scrub off last night's shame. The wind was sharper than usual, cold for mid-autumn. Her feet sank into the wet shoreline, the hem of her jeans dragging through seafoam. He stood with his back to her, speaking calmly with the realtor, who nodded and jotted something down. "Open house this weekend," the man was saying. "It'll move fast. This location always does." She called out before her courage could evaporate. "You said I could have it." Her voice cracked, half swallowed by the ocean wind. He turned, slowly, methodically, not startled, not surprised, like he'd already played out this moment 100 times in his head. "I did," he said. His tone was soft, almost gentle. Then, with the slightest tilt of his head, "You just showed everyone what that meant." The words hung in the air, not as an accusation, as a conclusion. She wanted to scream, to argue, to make a scene, but there was no audience left. No in-laws, no children, no Nate, just a realtor tapping something into his phone, probably scheduling the first showing. She looked back at the house, her home, or what had once been. He started walking, back toward the steps, his hands in his pockets, eyes on the wood grain like he was memorizing every board for the last time. Or maybe the first. She followed. "Please," she tried again, voice softer now. "Don't do this." But he didn't answer. The door creaked open. He stepped inside and closed it. No slam, no locking bolt, just the faint click of a man who had made peace with leaving someone behind. She stood on the porch, unsure what to do with her hands. Her breath fogged in front of her. Then she saw it. Her suitcase, neatly zipped, wiped clean wheels, propped beside the door like an Uber would be there any minute. It hadn't been there earlier. He'd packed it himself. She crouched beside it, unzipped it. Inside, clothes, her toothbrush, the charger she always forgot, a folded sweater she'd stolen from him during their 3rd anniversary trip and never gave back. She held it for a moment, gripping the worn fabric like it might anchor her. But it didn't. She looked back at the house. Every light was off. The silence was intentional, not punishment. Closure. She sat on the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon. The last rays turned the windows to mirrors. She couldn't see in anymore. Only herself, dim, alone, and reflected back in glass she no longer belonged behind. She didn't cry. Tears would have meant there was still something to bargain for. Instead, she reached for the suitcase handle and finally pulled.